It's very easy to think that everything was just peaceful and wonderful in the early Christian years, especially just after the death of Jesus and the Christian communities began to form, that everybody got along, that everything was fine. But we heard tonight in that second reading that at the time St. Paul was leading one of those Christian communities at Corinth, there arose some serious divisions in the community. And this distressed Paul. He was very distressed that this was happening. And this is what we heard Madeline read to us a few minutes ago. For it has been reported to me about you, my brothers and sisters, that there are rivalries among you. I mean that each of you is saying, I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, or I belong to Cephas, or I belong to Christ. This saddened Paul. And he worked hard to direct the community to be united only in following the teachings of Jesus. Not to get caught up in personalities and big different views, but rather, what was Jesus teaching us? This is what we should be doing and following. This is what should unite us. Now, if we look at today, we might say, wouldn't it be marvelous if all modern day Christian communities would agree that there should not be division among us? Sadly, we're not there yet. Imagine how disappointed St. Paul would be if he came back today and saw the way Christianity is fractured in so many different ways. We are not simply divided into theological camps and understandings, liberal or conservative. We're divided into distinct religions and denominations. We not only have our creeds, we have our own liturgies and our own confessions of faith. We are Catholic, we are Lutheran, Presbyterian, Baptist, Pentecostal, each believing that we have the truth. We are divided, each of us worshiping God in distinct church buildings scattered around our communities and scattered around the world. It should certainly be our prayer in our mission to someday realize again one holy Catholic, meaning universal, and apostolic church, that we would be founded on the teachings of the apostles, whose main mission was to bring the teachings of Jesus and to live them. Meanwhile, we must find ways to work together, all denominations, to live and proclaim the gospel values that Jesus taught us. This should be the essential part of who we are as a follower of Jesus. We can agree that there are many things, and maybe we can agree that there is no place in Christianity for violence or hatred among peoples and nations. There is no place, if we truly want to be followers of Jesus, for racism, discrimination. There is no place for devaluing human life at all stages. There is no place in Christianity for closing our ears to the cry of the poor. There is no place in Christianity for closing our doors to refugees fleeing violence and abject poverty. You agree, huh? There is no place in Christianity for those who would remain silent in the midst of injustices. On that, Christianity should be able to agree. Following Jesus and imitating Jesus is the mission that all Christians are called to. Come, follow me. Not literally to walk behind him, to walk with Jesus and to teach his values and live his values. That's how we follow him. It is the invitation that we heard in the gospel. This is not a journey we can make inside our heads. It's a journey we can travel only when we make up our minds to imitate in action the Jesus of the Scriptures, to see where he walked, to hear what he said, to act the way he acted in all circumstances. By doing that, we can get in touch with his outlook of life, his mindset, his standard of judgment, and also with the cause which he lived and died for. By imitating Jesus on his journey, excuse me, we can learn to assimilate these things. We can make them a part of us and make them our own values. To be Christian, a follower of Christ, gives us an identity and helps us to express how we understand ourselves as Christians as we walk in companionship with the Lord and share his mission. It demands that we give this task the first place over all our loyalties and commitments. What would Jesus do? It sounds trite, but it's really the core of the teachings of our faith. What would Jesus do? What does Jesus teach us about following him, about discipleship? It is the acceptance of the cross in our lives, to know that it'll never be easy. It wasn't easy for the Lord and Savior. The cross was always shadowing everything that the Lord did. And so to be a follower, a disciple of Jesus, is to accept the crosses in our life, a willingness to live a simple lifestyle, to leave things behind that impede us from going and doing the ministry of Jesus. It's cultivating an inner freedom so that we are ready to listen to the Spirit. What is the Spirit telling me? What is that little voice that I keep hearing, encouraging me to make a step forward in my faith and trying to bring joy to the people among whom we live and work? We need joy in our world. We're suffering so many difficulties. Discipleship will always involve a struggle between the allurements of a religion of prosperity and a religion of solidarity with the poor. Between a church that looks toward inward and nourishes its own children and a church that brings light and joy to whatever place it happens to occupy. Inner freedom comes through the self-discipline and prayer. Those who practice them will always be ready to generously follow the promptings and the guidance of the Spirit. Then we will be ready to come and follow me. The gospel shows us that the apostles who left their nets and followed Jesus were given a new mission, new seas to sail, and a deeper purpose for their lives. They were to stop fishing and now be active in ministry. For us, the followers of Jesus, God's not asking us, and Jesus is not asking us to leave our families. On the contrary, he wants us to bring his message to our families and live those messages in our family. He's not asking us to leave our jobs, but to bring Jesus to the workplace. Not to leave our residence, but to make our homes a place where Jesus always resides. For us to follow Jesus is not a matter of any of that. It is a matter of leaving behind a way of living that is far more difficult. To be able to hear the promptings of the Spirit that calls us to come follow him. The reign of God is open for all of us if we are willing to risk a new way of living, to abandon the paralysis of analysis, I like to think of it. Not to think so much, but to act and make our commitment to Jesus. Not to think about what's hard and it's an obstacle and I don't know if I can do that, I'm not smart enough. And no, stop that. Just be who you are and bring the gospel message. The apostles left their nets and they followed. We can tell what is really important in our life, not by what we get out of it, but what we are willing to give up for it. What nets, we might ask, entanglements do we still need to leave behind at the shore in order to push out to sea in following the Lord? The apostles left their nets and followed the Lord. So can we.